Good evening and welcome to Gardener's World, and this time from the Magnolias.
Now, Percy, I can remember you introducing gardening programmes like that when I was in short trousers, I think. How long have you been doing television gardening?
Well, I started the first television programmes in 1951, which is a very long time ago, of course.
Skewer or something. And then remove the lid so you can see what you're about. Put the pack into some water until the water actually comes up to the top and you can see that they're soaked. And then when they are, you just place the lid on the top loosely and put them in a warm place, like perhaps the airing cupboard or on top of a radiator. Keep an eye on them every day, and as soon as the first one comes through, put them into the light. Well, I was wrong about the seeds working to one side because, look, they have come up absolutely magnificently, and I think that is a surefire thing for a beginner gardener. They'll cost you about 59p for each one of those packs. We have used vermiculite ourselves to solve a little problem. I've always found it extremely difficult to germinate impatiens until last year when we discovered this way. Now, the reason why they're difficult is because they want constant moisture and also light in order to germinate them. And the way to achieve that is, instead of sprinkling the seed over the top, to make some little furrows in the compost and sow your seeds in the bottom of those furrows, and then to cover them with a little bit of vermiculite. You can buy that in the garden centre. That will make sure that they're nice and moist, and also the light will go through vermiculite so they germinate quite well, as you can see. But if you still find that difficult, then this is the modern way to buy your seeds. You can buy these through the seedsman, and you let the grower do the actual germinating. You buy them as these little plants. Now, this comes in a pack of 35, and that'll cost you £5.80. That's about 17p a plant. What you've got to do is to stick a pencil through the bottom like that, and that will release the plants, and you'll see you've got a little tiny root system there, but that's well grown and it'll go on and really romp away. All you've got to do now is to either put them in a seed tray at wider spacings, or I would advise potting them up, because you'll get a very much better plant that way. You can also buy bigger plants like geraniums, but these come in a slightly different way. These are in peat blocks like this, and they'll cost you £7.35 for 10, about 73.5p each, which is still much cheaper than you buy in the garden centre, and of course it's much more fun to do your own anyway. Petunias here as well, but you know, we do have one slight problem, and that is because the seedsmen grow all these to the customer's order, then by the time we can actually show you the plants, it's too late, of course, to order them. But now's the time to be thinking about ordering the plants for the autumn, things like universal pansies, and of course we'll be sure to remind you about things like petunias and impatiens at the right time.
Earlier in the year we had Terence Reid talking to us about conservatory plants, and we were particularly impressed with the citrus he'd brought along because they were in good fruit and flower. Now, interestingly enough, if you sow them from pips, they're not always that good. Geoff's got a lemon tree over here that he's had for some years, and it's never produced any flowers or fruit, and that was grown from a pip. And I've heard lots of other stories the same, of plants getting to 7 or 8 feet and nothing's happened at all. I've started a few lemon seedlings off here. They were started in the airing cupboard and then put onto a windowsill in the house. But I'm beginning to wonder if I've been wasting my time, because it's probably better to buy them as grafted plants or as plants taken as cuttings. But there are lots of really good tropical fruits that you can try and take the seeds out of and grow. One of them is the mango, which are really good fruits. Now, they cost about 70 or 80p, so they're not cheap, but at the same time you get quite a lot of flesh off of one fruit. That's all one about the same size as that. which make lovely additions to fruit salads with some of the more common fruit in. And inside that is the pip, like this, which is quite large. Now you'll find when you take it out that there's an awful lot of flesh attached, and you want to scrape all that off before you think of sowing it. And the method is to get a pot and some seed compost. I better do this on the paper, muck my board up, and just plant it so that it's slightly diagonal in the pot with the tip uppermost. And just push the compost down around it so it's just under the surface there. And I'm going to put some cling film on top of that and pop it into the airing cupboard where it'll be nice and warm, because they need quite a lot of heat to germinate. Actually, I'm going to need to get myself a bigger piece than that, I think. But that's to keep the moisture in. You'd water it in and into the airing cupboard, and as soon as it's germinated, out onto a nice warm windowsill. Now another one is the granadilla. Now this is a type of passion fruit. And if I cut this open, these cost about 50 or 60p. You'll see the seeds and the pulp inside that you actually eat. Now you might be thinking, oh my goodness, I've spent 60p on a load of frog spawn. Now it looks revolting, I know, but it tastes delicious and you can crunch the seeds up. But save a few, because as well as being able to eat it or add it to a fruit salad, you can also sow the seeds. And these will not again give you fruiting plants, but they will give you a very attractive passion flower, more attractive than the Passiflora caerulea that you grow outside. Have some moist seed compost and just set the seeds down into it, flat, and then cover them by their own size with some more compost and just press down, and again cover with cling film into the airing cupboard, and as soon as they're up, onto the windowsill, then prick out and grow on as climbing plants. And they should grow on quite well. But a Passiflora that will give you fruit in a greenhouse, and at Wisley where I used to grow them, we had lots, boxes and boxes of our plants, is the Passiflora edulis, the little passion fruit, which has a much more acid, sort of yellow-coloured pulp inside. It's a bit tastier, not quite so sweet. Those seeds will give you flowers and fruit, so that's probably the best one to try if you've got a greenhouse or conservatory, in exactly the same way. And another good one is pineapple, because the fruit is so nice as well, really good for fruit salads. But you must make sure that you choose a pineapple with a really good tuft of growth on it. The growth inside there must be really green and healthy and wanting to grow, and not rotten and brown as you sometimes see. Now the method is to chop this growth bit away from the fruit, not too far up into the growth. Take some of the bottom leaves off and put it into some water for about a month. This one's already been going, and you can see that I've cut off quite a lot of the bottom leaves here and tidied them up a bit. And after a while you'll see that little roots will begin to grow out of the base, and that's the time at which it wants to be potted up. So we get some potting compost again and just pot it carefully in there, and that's ready now to grow. Its roots have started to form and it will expand out into the compost. The roots will grow and fill it up, and that will grow into a nice foliage plant. You might get pineapples if you're really, really lucky and you've got the right room conditions, the right light and warmth. But if not, I can certainly guarantee you a really good foliage pot plant.
Down here in the budget garden, my cold frames are beginning to get going, so it's time for a bit of an update. This one, first of all, is my cheap £10 job. This is made just with a bit of corrugated plastic and some roofing laths. It's already beginning to produce. I've got down here some radishes, which are sown in the ground here, and they won't be very long at all before they're cropping. Some Tom Thumb lettuce here, very quick maturing little lettuce that is, so that'll be quite quick. I multiple sowed some carrots. This is the variety Rondo. I did them exactly the same as I did the onions, which you saw earlier, but they were raised on the windowsill. And also on the windowsill I've been raising some more Tom Thumb lettuce to follow on from the others, and a few early cauliflowers, and they will go out a bit later on in the garden. Now this frame is one that I haven't shown you before. This is one of the cheapest of the commercial ones that I could find. It's 4 foot by 3 foot, and this will cost just over £31. It's again made with this corrugated plastic. If it has a snag, it's the fact that they don't open very fast, so it's a little bit difficult when you're actually planting. But I find that because this stuff bends quite easily, it's probably easier just to whip these out, and it's only when you're doing jobs like planting that you need to do it, so it's not much of a fag. Now this frame is quite a bit taller than the other one, so that enables me to grow some dwarf broad beans, but make sure you go for a dwarf variety like the Saturn or Bonnie Lad. Next to those spinach, I wouldn't be without spinach, that's one that keeps cropping all the time, and then some early turnips. This is Milan Purple Top, which produce some nice small turnips, and of course early cauliflowers, again a summer cauliflower Alpha Polaris, which will crop well before the ones in the garden. In my posh 20-pound wooden cold frame, I'm doing a bit of propagating. And I've already got some sweet peas going from seed, and they're grown in these whale hide tubes, and I've already pinched the tops out, and you can see that they're beginning to bush out now, and they'll make nice bushy plants. They can actually go outside now, ready for planting out, because they'll stand a degree or two of frost. And I'm also propagating some hardy annuals, things like alyssum, limnanthes, the poached egg plant, gadesha, and I've got a new Clarkia here called Love Affair, which is quite nice. Now, normally, of course, with hardy annuals, they're sown direct outside in the ground, and now's the time to do it. But, you know, if your soil is very wet and heavy like mine is, that's often easier said than done. So I'm growing them like this, and what I do is, again, to grow them in these little polystyrene cells, filled up with a soilless compost, and then you just put a little tiny pinch of seed in each one. It doesn't really matter whether you put in 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, it'll still just make one plant. These seeds are quite small. This is Gypsophila, so it's hard to gauge them accurately, but it just doesn't matter at all. And just fill all those up, and then when you've completed the whole tray, I like to just stabilise them with a little bit of silver sand over the top. That, I think, is the ideal way. And you finish off the whole lot, and they don't need any heat at all for germination, so of course the cold frame is an ideal place for them. Put them in there, cover them up with a bit of black polythene, and keep an eye on them for some rapid germination.